Yeah, I can't stress enough. Giving up that control, it's very hard to do, but once you can do it, and once you just have faith that the right things are going to show up in your life when you do that, and you know it, you're not just saying it to yourself, you're not trying to convince yourself, you actually believe it, then magic starts to happen.
Aloha, our beautiful listeners and viewers on the other side of the world.
Aloha.
And everywhere.
Yeah.
My name is Krista Lakshmi-Detten.
And I'm Michael Ditton.
And we are Infinite
Activation.
Coming to you from?
We're coming to you from Southern California. And it is sunny in San Diego, but a little bit stormy at the same time. So Go figure.
And today we are here, first time in history, together hosting this podcast with Michael and having a really amazing guest on the other side. And Abundance in Action podcast has been now in the works for almost over half a year. Mm-hmm. And it has been quite an amazing adventure. We have been networking. We have been sharing a lot of our amazing friends. And today is kind of the similar day where we have a really amazing real estate investor and expert, Mike Wolf, on the other side. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Glad to have you.
Yeah. And we met Michael during Brendon Burchard's events. And we started to go to Brendon Burchard's events like some years ago. And every time we run into you, and then I noticed right away, oh my God, you have like so many amazing shirts. Every time you had some really artistic or colorful
beautiful
or like
shirts.
Different shirts. So we started to talk about your shirts. And then what came out?
Well, here we are today. Mike shared his story about traveling around the world and picking up different shirts in different locations all the time. We found out that we had a little bit more in common. Then we found out Michael was in real estate.
Yay.
And of course, that is one of my biggest passions and desires to continue to expand and grow. And a relationship was formed. And Mike has not only become a friend, but he's also a coach and mentor to me. So I can't even express how honored I am to have you on board.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that we got to meet, and whenever I'm at those Brendon events, I'm always volunteering. So that's one of the great benefits of being there is that, he attracts amazing people like yourself. So I feel very blessed to have run into you during our mutual time together at Brendon events.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we love Brendon, obviously.
Yeah. Followers. So you have quite a story. Like I listened to quite many different podcasts with you, and it's really amazing to listen where you come from. And you are kind of like jokingly said that you are the wealthiest homeless Canadian out there, traveling the world and having fun. And you have actually done real estate over 30 years. But what's really amazing is that you do it so differently. Like what I really love about you is you have such a big heart and you have that ethical part, which is there, like you really are out there to help people. And you are also, even now, last year, you kind of looked and reinvented yourself as well and did some new choices and changes in your business, the way you do, so that you could help more people. So you completely reinvented yourself as well. And the way and the depth of the knowledge you have about real estate and everything, connected to that is like, oh my God, it's like an ocean. Me, who I'm like coming from the, healing and coaching background, I listened to some of those podcasts and then I was like, oh my God, I have to like note down all of those like foreign words for me because I don't know much about real estate. But it was such, as an anthropologist, it was also like very exciting to kind of like go deeper. So today I'll probably ask some of those questions because we may also have some people who have no clue. So you can educate them as well. And what I really love about the beginning of your story was, which I think so many of us, we kind of get stuck into is, we are growing up in families, and then our families, of course, want the best. And your parents as well, they were expecting you to become a lawyer. And then you started to go on that route. And then what happened? what happened with that projection?
Yeah, well, I was kind of living my parents' dream for me, and I remember, middle of grade 12, I had no idea what I wanted to be, and my parents were always talking about doctor, lawyer, and I'm terrified of blood, so doctor was never going to happen in a zillion years. But lawyer sounded kind of cool because I watched those TV shows. The lawyers always had the fancy offices. It looked really kind of glamorous. I've since met a lot of lawyers who don't feel that way, but anyway. I got my first degree, and with that degree came a whole bunch of student loans. And I decided, well, before I go back to get my second degree, I'm going to pay some of these off. And got a job at the phone company. A buddy of mine, his mother was a manager there, and the phone company was back in those days. It was government run. It was unionized. Paid quite well. And while I was there, I managed to buy my first home to live in, my first residence. And shortly after I did that, my mortgage broker called me up and said, Mike, if you want, you're making good money, your credit's good. If you want, I could probably get you a second mortgage so you could buy a second property. And I remember thinking, well, why do I want a second property? And what he said after that changed my life, because he said, well, you buy a second property, you put tenants in there, they pay your mortgage for you. Anything over and above that you get to keep. But more importantly, 25 years from now, that thing's going to be paid off. And all the money that comes every month, that's your retirement. And it'll probably be worth a lot more money. So I thought that kind of makes sense. And so I did end up buying a second property. Didn't really know anything about real estate investing, never on my radar prior to that. But I think sometimes the universe puts things on your path to lead you maybe in a different direction than the one you're heading. And so unfortunately for my parents, I kind of strayed from their plan for me and went on my new plan for me. Actually, I didn't really actually abandon their plan immediately. So I held on to that property, still at the phone company. And a couple of years later, the market took off. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting on this equity. And I remember thinking to myself, over the last couple of years, I made X amount at the phone company, and I made the Y amount, which is a lot bigger, doing real estate. And I don't even know what I'm doing in real estate. So if I could do that by mistake, what would happen if I made this my career? And then at that point, I was in my mid-20s, and I was sitting on a relatively large amount of money all of a sudden in equity in my two homes, and thinking I knew it all. And but I remember quitting my job at the phone company, not thinking, okay, well, now I can't get more mortgages. Then that didn't even dawn on me. I just immediately quit my job at the phone company and told my parents, no, like law school, that's your dream for me. I'm not going to law school. And my mother kept begging me, Mike, go get your second degree, so you have something to fall back on. Then after that, do all the real estate you want. And then you have at least something to fall back on. And no, I said, no, Mom, I have this figured out. I know exactly what I'm doing. And then I proceeded to lose almost all of what I made on those deals because I didn't really have the due diligence down. I didn't have a direction. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a strategy. I just had this ego that said, well, hey, you made this much on your first deal, so you don't need help. You can just go do it. Let's duplicate it. Except that the first deal took me 2 years for the market to do its thing. Had nothing to do with me being smart or strategic or anything. Just had to do with I had really lucky timing. And once I quit the job, it's like, well, how do I make that next paycheck? I can't wait 2 years for my next paycheck. I got to do these, maybe every 90 days or at least a few times a year. If I can do this a couple of times a year, I'm good. And but I didn't know how. And so I basically went and was in a hurry to get my next deal. Pretty much, like I said, lost a lot of my profit. And that was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me. I was a blessing in disguise, as so often our setbacks are. And it forced me, to lose the ego and become a lot more humble. And at that point, I actually found a mentor to show me the way on how to do this stuff properly. And had I not done that, I might be on your show talking about law right now. I definitely would not be talking about real estate investing or mindset or any of the stuff that got me here. And I actually owe it to my mom, because once I told her that, Mom, I know what I'm doing, I couldn't go back to her and tell her she was right. Because, in my mid-20s, like I knew everything. I didn't want to tell my parents they were right. And so I had to figure it out. I had no choice. So I had to get back up, get a mentor, figure it out. And, here we are 31 years later, and it hasn't been all like just a straight, beautiful line of, success with everything I did. But once I got the mentor, it definitely led to a lot more successes than failures. And so I'm very grateful that, I had that big setback that actually made me coachable and humble, and it changed me as a human being. And now I always am very sympathetic towards underdogs. Like when I see people and they're struggling financially, I want to help them, because I know that it's such a thin line between where I am now and where I could have ended up had I not got myself back up. So anyway, long answer to a short question, but I get very passionate, so I can't help myself.
Well, we love that passion.
Yeah. And it's
Thank you.
really amazing point what you're actually telling here. You got out of this kind of critical situation because you found yourself a mentor. And this last year, one of the things I noticed with also many of my clients, once they got into like real crisis, they thought like, okay, working on my mindset or doing self-development, this goes out of the window because I have to just like survive. Not knowing that if they would maybe get, mentor or coach, that could actually help them to get where they want to get, like faster and easier. But it's just that we get into that, like, trying to keep your head above the water, and then the smart thinking kind of, dissolves.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because right now is when people need a mentor more than ever. It's where they need to work on their mindset more than ever. Like that's really the secret to success, is one, having somebody who's paved the path before you, and two, being in the right frame of mind. Because right now, for those of you who are watching during these crazy COVID times that we now live in, for those of you watching, I mean, a lot of people right now, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're freaking out. They don't really know what the path is. And I personally believe that we're heading into although there's obviously a lot of challenges right now, we're also heading into a lot of opportunity. And for those people who keep their head clear and they're positive and they can see that, hey, there's opportunity that's going to come from this chaos, those people are going to thrive. And then there's other people that unfortunately, they got their head buried in the sand and they're just waiting for life to happen to them. And, unfortunately, COVID is going to unfortunately treat those people very badly. And I'm not just talking about health-wise. Obviously, that's going to have an effect on, depression and stress and all that, but financially. And obviously, when people are in a bad financial position, usually everything else is also falling apart, like relationships and health. It's all tied together, as you guys know more than anybody. So,
yeah. And I really like what you brought up in several of the podcasts. You said, you understood that going from know it all to learn it all. Yes. And it's such a good reminder because, right now, that's like the key element. Even myself, like me and Michael, we are always in some kind of like coaching program to improve as, humans, but also as coaches, so that we could be the best and help the people the best way. And I think that's like such a good point, what you're sharing here.
Well, the best, I think the best, I was just going to say the best mentors and the best teachers are also the best learners. We're lifelong learners, and we go and, learn from other people, and then we pass that on to our students. And so the best mentors in the world are always learning. They never stop learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the world continues to change around us. And as long as we continue to grow and accept that change and learn new things, we're able, as coaches and mentors like yourself, able to shed that light on somebody else who is prepared to receive that information. So it's a wonderful world. It's a ripple effect.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So now you have also noticed, like, this last year has been quite a lot of chaos and so on. You have reinvented yourself, and we actually just like launched a program called Reinvent Yourself. Mm-hmm. So why do you think that right now is super important for people to become successful, or even more successful if they are already successful, to reinvent themselves?
Yeah, well, I mean, these days, the world we left behind, that's not coming back. The world we left, we're going to have a new version of normal coming down the pipeline here. We don't know what that looks like yet, but how life looked in 2019, we're never going to see that again. And so if you're still clinging on to what served you back then and what was working for you, it's probably not going to serve you in 2021. I mean, I hope it does. And for some people, maybe, but I think a lot of people, that job that you used to have, that's gone. The business that you used to own, that may have got wiped out. And so you have to keep up with the times. You have to keep Now it doesn't mean when I say the new normal is not going to be how it was in 2019. In some ways, I believe it's going to be a lot better. I think the planet needed a reset. There's going to be some great things going forward, but the things that maybe how you made your living in the past, that may or may not still be there. How you used to live, how you used to, maybe you're used to going to an office, that might not exist anymore. I mean, a whole lot of things are shifting, and if you're not shifting with it, that's going to be very problematic. Now, as you mentioned, I reinvented myself last year. I didn't even really mean to reinvent myself because the businesses that I was running before are firing on all cylinders. They're actually doing, as weird as it may sound, 2020 was actually my best year for the existing businesses I already had. But I also realized that, for those who don't know me, I'm normally very nomadic. I normally travel pretty much every day of the year. And when the COVID hit, I went back to Canada, which is where I'm from, because I thought probably the best place for me to be is near my family. Got my daughter there, my grandkids, my brother lives there. So I thought it'd be good to be close to family. And for the first couple of weeks that I went back home, normally I'm used to having to wake up early and running through airports and catching flights. And all of a sudden I got like nothing on my calendar. This is awesome. And so I slept in every day and like everybody else watched Netflix till I ran out of things to watch on Netflix. But then the phone started to ring, and it was, podcasters like yourself and radio shows and summits. And everybody wanted to know, well, what's going to happen with the economy? What's going to happen with real estate? And I was realizing that so many people are fearful of, what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen with their money. And so I realized, well, I actually went back to, I remember 2007, 2008, when we had that last really big recession. And during that time, I set up a company called Foreclosure Fixers because there were so many people losing their homes to foreclosure. And so I remember as I was hearing about how the global economy was being shut down, I was thinking, I'm going to have to set up Foreclosure Fixers again. And which is fine. So Foreclosure Fixers was a business where I'd either try to help keep people in their home that were going to lose it to the bank. So basically I had, how you get that, you've probably seen those postcards, we buy homes, we pay cash for homes. Well, a lot of people in foreclosure get 1,000 of those every single, they're getting tons of them every single day. So I actually took time to learn the foreclosure laws inside and out. And I sent out a pamphlet that said, I can help stop the foreclosure. And I found that I got two different types of people that would call me on that. So the first type are, people that, sometimes bad things happen to good people. And right now with COVID, I can't think of a time in history where more good people are being affected by something, not by their own fault. And, people that have never missed a mortgage payment or a credit card payment in their life. Well, what do you do when you lose your job? I mean, and everything's shut down. What are you going to do? You've got no choice. You get behind. So sometimes bad things happen to good people. And for those people, quite often, they get back on their feet, they lose their job, but they get another job. And then they can start making monthly payments again. They just can't pay those arrears. Maybe they got 5 or 10 or 20,000 behind, and they just don't have that money. And they're going to lose their home to the bank. So for people like that, quite often I would loan the money, help pay off the arrears, and they would pay me in installments instead of a lump sum. And I'd help them stay in their home. Now, there's a second type of person, and these are people that like to kind of keep up with the Joneses, and they typically have a way bigger home than what they need and fancier cars and all the toys. And these are people you can't loan money to. If you loan money to them, they're going to burn through that. You're never going to see it again, and they're still going to lose a home. So for people like that, I would give them what I call a soft landing. And what I mean by that is I'd be in a position where I know I could steal their home if I wanted to because they're so desperate and they're not even thinking clearly, but I would never do that. I'd give them, I always make sure they had money for a damage deposit, several months rent, money for food, and then I actually help them to get back on their feet. Sometimes I put them in another one of my properties that was more affordable and do a rent to own for them. I'd always come up with, every time I'd sit across the table from somebody, I'd always come up with a solution that was in there as favorable for them as I could possibly make it, but at the same time, not lose money myself. And so quite often, instead of getting that home run, I maybe, get a more moderate paycheck. But these people, if they lost their job, they worked with 10 other people that just lost their job, and they would send all their friends to me. And so what I found is that, I made a lot more money by taking less on each deal than I ever did getting that home run. And so the reason I tell you this, though, is when I heard they were shutting down the global economy, I was thinking, oh, here we go again. I'm going to probably have to set up foreclosure fixers, which I didn't mind because I got to help a lot of people. And you never know who, I had one lady who I gave her one of the, what I call that soft landing. I put her in another property, and she called me a couple months later and said, listen, Mike, I never told you this at the time, the day that I got your marketing materials, I was actually thinking of killing myself. And so I don't take lightly the things that I do. It's not just about helping people stay in their home or get into another home. As I mentioned earlier, when the money part's not working, neither are the relationships, neither is the health. People are, they're just not in a good frame of mind. And anyway, I always like to think that the universe always seems to put me on this path, the proper path I'm supposed to be on, almost like magic. And so all of a sudden I started getting these calls from people saying, hey, can you be on my summit? And I got to go talk about how, you can go and help some of these people that are going to be in trouble, or maybe you're one of those people in trouble. Maybe I can help you. And so as luck would have it, I ended up in 2020 creating a year-long coaching program where now I'm getting a whole bunch of other people like yourself, Michael, on the front lines, and I'm training them. Well, hey, once this opportunity starts up, once we see all these people in trouble, right now there's a foreclosure moratorium, so the banks aren't foreclosing. That's not going to last forever. So whenever that starts up again, we're going to see a whole lot of people in trouble. And so now instead of just me on the front lines, maybe helping 30, 40, 50 families this year, if I can train 100 other people to go save 30, 40, 50 families, we can start a movement. So my goal for this year, I did reinvent myself. I see it more as almost a mission where, I really want to train a whole bunch of people to be ethical real estate investors, to be on the front lines, helping other people, but also getting paid for it. So creating win-wins. So 2020 by mistake, not because I woke up really motivated one day. It's just, it seemed everything just kind of, the universe kept pointing me in the right direction. And, this year I got on the TEDx stage where I got to talk a little bit about this. Just all these opportunities I wasn't even looking for just kept, they just kept building up, and it became so easy that I really, it just happened by magic, really. And here I am, I created another very successful business. I don't mean successful by how much money I make. I mean successful in that I can train a whole bunch of other people that are maybe trying to reinvent themselves right now. And I'm also showing them how to be ethical and how to help a whole bunch of other people and really starting a movement. And so that's kind of a long way of telling you what happened in 2020. But, so many people, when they talk about 2020, about how horrible it was and all these, and I don't want to be, I want to be sensitive about it. I know obviously people are getting sick from this, and it's been very, very tough on a lot of people, but I think there's also a lot of silver linings, and that it created more bandwidth and time for people. They weren't running around as much. And the people that use that time wisely, I think in the future, they might look back on this time and think that this was a blessing in disguise for them, because they were forced to reinvent themselves, and they got into doing something that they didn't really love. It was just comfortable, but they didn't really love it. And so once again, long answer. But
yeah, no, we love it. And this is great material. In fact, we can relate to the reinvent in the time of need for others, because that's how, we literally in March, April, May, whenever it was, we dropped everything and created the Reinvent Yourself program to help others because we knew they need it. But I've got to go through a couple of things here in everything you just said. One thing that's not in my, that I'm going to say that's not in my notes that you said, I've often heard you say, leave people in a better place than you found them in. I love that. I practice that. I believe it. Some of the other things, ethical investor, I love it. I believe it. That's one of the reasons that I love you. Mentorship, we love that. Karma, magic and flow. Crystal picked up on something that she may talk a little bit more about that. Real estate investor, or the person that you are you born that way, or do you become that way? You weren't born that real estate investor, you became that investor. And fortunately for us and for the rest of the world, your heart set, you have great mindset. You create these relationships. So this is all, just all the things that have led to your path of success, which is, what we try to promote through our Abundance in Action podcast, is people that have created their path of success based on their true life purpose, their life mission, and heartfelt and then look at the, what comes of it. And this is the message that we're trying to teach to people who are in the position right now that have a hard time believing that it's even possible, that in the time where they need to change, where they've got, not mortgage to the hill, but loans to the hill for school or what have you. But this is the ideal time to reinvent yourself. And most of the businesses that are succeeding right now have learned to adapt and reinvent themselves. we're seeing it all the time here. We've got a restaurant bar across the street that, created a whole new atmosphere outside for people to come to when outdoor dining was available. And when it wasn't, they created a drive-through. They literally put barricades up so people could drive through and still order and come. So not only are they still able to serve the public and get a little bit of money, but they do have staff that they're able to, pay a little bit. And then these other companies that said, oh, there's no way we can do this from home, yet they've learned to adapt and have, their employees do their jobs from home. So reinventing, whether intentional or unintentional, this past year has been a big part of the challenge overcoming process and growth that we're all experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
And I really loved what you mentioned, Michael, so that, use the time wisely. And just your example as well, you just already, you're really well connected with your talents and skills already and knowledge. And now you were just like in this beautiful space where you were ready to receive the guidance, and then you just followed it, and the guidance was taking you to the next step. And I think the difference from that, like old ways of doing business and now where we are heading, is more and more getting into that like divine feminine, what they say, to listen to the guidance, go with the flow. And instead of like going against the current, which some people still do, like they really like cling into that old way. It's just, first of all, it takes a little more calories. You may get bigger muscles, but it's so uncomfortable. Why? You could just like go with the flow and, let everything come to you and create it in an easy way. And that's such a beautiful example of abundance in action, like all these resources in you, which you are now like sharing with the world. And talking about it, I want to like go a little deeper about the topic of magic and karma, because you have mentioned it here and there, like kind of like on the surface, but I know that you are also a very like into mindset and growth and all of these things. Like, what's your take on magic and karma and what experiences you have?
Yeah, well, I believe a lot in both those things, but for me, like karma is huge. And I also, you mentioned go with the flow, and that's how I live my life. And being able to go with the flow is not that easy for a lot of people, because we like to think we're in control, and we tend to be control freaks, especially entrepreneurs. We tend to want to have a lot of control. And I think sometimes the universe has a better plan for us. And what we can see what's in front of us, and we have our experiences. So we know from the past what's happened. And so sometimes we're afraid to try new things because it's uncomfortable. Getting out of that comfort zone is not comfortable. But after a while, once you get good at giving up control, which I used to be a workaholic. This is one of the things I talked about on at my TED Talk a few weeks ago, is that I used to have to have 100% control. I had to know everything that was going on. And it made me very difficult to put people on my team, to build teams and scale my business. And so at one point it was all me, and I was a workaholic. Now, ironically, once I learned to give up that control, and I started to hire people, and I started to allow them some freedom to make some decisions as opposed to me micromanaging them. And as I got better and better people on my team, my business started to flourish, and I started to make more money putting less of my time into it. And so while I'd be traveling, if I was volunteering, if I was hanging out with my daughter or my grandkids, I'd be making more money than when I actually did the work by myself. And so I think a lot of it comes down to just having faith that we can only see what's in front of us. Like I said, I see the universe as kind of being this GPS where it knows what's around the corner. It knows things that we don't know yet. And it'll take us on a bit of a ride that sometimes feels uncomfortable because it's not in our comfort zone. We're doing things that we didn't normally like to do. We like to cling on to the past and have control. But if we actually have faith that the universe is working for us and we just go with that flow and see where we end up, I can only speak from my experience, but it's led me to things, I'm doing things that I never in a million years thought I could do. That was not in my wheelhouse. It was not in my comfort zone. It was not stuff that I even thought I could, like for example, the TED Talk I just did not that many years ago. Actually, let's go back to university. When I was in university, I was in this class where I had to give a presentation. We had to do research and then present it to the class. And this presentation, if I remember correct, was like worth 20 or 25%. A pretty significant amount of the year's mark was based on this one presentation. And I actually skipped it because I was absolutely terrified. I was very, very shy. I was very terrified to get in front of that class. I skipped it. Since then, now I make my living. I get paid to speak quite often. And I've been on a TEDx stage and I've been on television. I've done a lot of things that were at one time way out of my comfort zone. And so sometimes the things that we tell ourselves we just can't do, once we figure out how to do them, once we just, get out of our comfort zone a little bit, then it leads to that next thing. And so I always look back whenever I have something that's difficult for me. Once I finally conquered getting on stage, I conquered that fear. Well, then I remember when I wanted to go shoot some videos, I was terrified to be on camera. But then I thought back, well, remember that time you were scared to get on stage? Well, when you go on stage, you don't get a repeat. If you screw up, you can't take it back. On video, you get as many tries as it takes. So I talked myself into doing it. So I use that as an anchor. So I just believe, though, that when you get out of your comfort zone, that's where the best stuff happens. Number two, a lot of the stuff that you don't see yourself doing, like I never saw myself as a real estate investor. That never happened until I got that first big paycheck. And all of a sudden it's like, man, I want to do this again and again and again. That would have never even been on my radar if for some reason, I'll call it magic or the universe, for some reason, I didn't end up on that path. I would have been a lawyer right now. And no offense against lawyers, but I would have been a horrible one because I'm like the most non-confrontational person ever. I'm just really chill and I want everybody to just get along. I don't want to be a lawyer. So that was just my parents' dream for me. So I think a lot of it has to do with faith. And when you have faith that the universe is working for you and with you, as opposed to, it'll be really easy for some people 5 years from now, their story is going to be, I was doing really well. I had the successful business and then COVID hit and now my life sucks. And this bad thing happened and that bad thing happened. Or somebody 5 years from now could say, hey, you know what? COVID did this to me. And instead of waiting to see what else life was going to dish out to me, I just kind of got a little bit out of my comfort zone. I started to change things. I got away from, I ditched the past and I created the Mike Wolf 2.0. And now I'm so grateful because it's so much better than the 1.0. I didn't know that this was even possible. So I think that I believe a lot in that there's, something much bigger than us guiding us and putting us on the right path. And often when we feel all these hurdles and all this overwhelm, I think it's because we're fighting the things that we're supposed to be doing. Quite often we're not doing what we were put on the earth to do, I think. And I also believe in karma. When I started to give back a lot more, it used to be all about making more money, make more money. When I started to give back a lot more, I just found that things would just come at me like one after another. And, we talked about going with the flow. I find that when you give back a lot, you just end up in the flow and just like things just happen without you even trying. Like I said, 2020, I never said, I'm going to go create a year-long group coaching program, which has been a huge success. I just shared the stage with 24 other speakers at the TED Talk. All the other ones, they put in a lot of effort to get there on that stage. They submitted all kinds of applications and jumped through a lot of hoops. It just fell into my lap. I wasn't even trying to get on that stage. For a lot of people, that was their bucket list. To me, it's like, well, this is pretty cool. I'm very grateful to be here, but that was never on my bucket list. And so things just happen. You just get in the flow and things start to happen for you, but you have to have faith. You have to be open-minded. You have to have the right mindset. And I believe you have to want to give back and help others, and it'll come back to you 100 times over. And that's just my observations. And I know I know a lot of real estate investors, this is very woo-woo for them. It's not your typical, here's how you make lots of money, but that's the honest truth. If I had to sum up my success, it wasn't because I had this way better strategy than somebody else. It's just how I view the world and how I view the other person on the other side of the table from me and trying to create win-wins. And that I think led to where I'm at. And so, I can't stress enough, giving up that control, it's very hard to do. But once you can do it, and once you just have faith that the right things are going to show up in your life when you do that, and you know it, you're not just saying it to yourself, you're not trying to convince yourself, you actually believe it, then magic starts to happen.
Yeah, I so agree. Like both of our lives, we have had many experiences like that. And it's so good that you remind us all, that flow and faith, when you marry those two, you will get trust. Like you're trusting yourself and you're trusting the universe, and you start to also trust people. And to activate the whole system is basically coming through giving. And once you start to give, and as you have mentioned here before, also really thinking of how can I take care of people, how can I help, then it's just like it's an automatic system. You can't almost stop it because it just starts to come back at you like a boomerang, you know.
Okay.
Such a beautiful way of putting it and sharing it. And I'm so glad that there are real estate investors like you, such a holistic and heartfelt person. So, and almost, you know, the same line as Michael is also like that. There are some more people like that, because I think many people, they also think like, oh, real estate people, they're just like, you know, tanks and like running over people and so on. So it's a good different kind of example. But now you mentioned something which I think you and everyone has heard also. One of the biggest fears is, you know, public speaking. So do you have maybe a couple of tips for our listeners and viewers? What could they do to overcome that fear? Like, what did you do to really, like, you know, I mean, TED Talk, like, oh my God, like how did you manage to survive that?
Yeah, well, actually, I wasn't even nervous at my TED Talk, but if we go back in time, I used to be like terrified. And so I remember, you know, I'm a Canadian who started investing in the US probably, I don't know, 16, 17 years ago. And so when the recession kicked in, all of a sudden, nobody in the US wanted to go to seminars on real estate investing. Everybody was terrified and they hated real estate. And so a very well-known company came up to Canada and decided to do seminars there, because we fared the recession a lot better than Americans did. We didn't get hit nearly as bad by it. Our house prices didn't tank like it did in the US. And suddenly a lot of Canadians were very interested in investing in the US. And I got a call, once again, the universe at work. I got a call out of the blue by a very well-known and prestigious real estate training company. And they said, hey, Mike, can you come speak for us across Canada? You know, we're looking for a Canadian who's invested in the US, and every single person we talk to, you're the guy they mentioned. So could you come speak for us? And I had never spoken on a stage before. And so I said, well, I'm a real estate investor. I'm not a speaker. I'm terrified I'd be terrified. I go, don't worry, just speak from your heart. Just talk about what you know. I go, okay. Well, anyway, because it was a very prestigious company, and the person at the top of that was one of my heroes, is very, very difficult for me to say no. So I pretty much feel like, once again, you know, a lot of the things that have happened in my life, that they were just kind of put to me on a silver platter, where I'd be really dumb to say no, even though I wanted to say no. I didn't need the money. I didn't want to be in the spotlight. Like I said, I was very shy. Last thing I wanted was to be on a stage. But anyway, next thing you know, I'm touring across Canada with this company and, you know, speaking from the stage for them. And the first time I did it, I remember I was like, in my mind anyway, I was sweating profusely and stuttering, and I thought I totally bombed. And I was kind of relieved when it was over, because I was like, they're not going to invite me back, because I just blew it. And that's good. I never have to get on a stage again as long as I live. And then afterwards, I had all these people coming up to me going, oh, that was so inspiring, and we learned so much. And anyway, I ended up touring around Canada with them for a little bit over a year, going all across the country teaching real estate. So for me, I was kind of put in a position where it was almost impossible to say no. Just like this year-long coaching program, it just fell in my lap. Just like the TEDx talk, it fell in my lap. I wasn't looking to do any of these things. So now, this may not happen to all of you. You may not get this big, land this big speaking opportunity, but I'd say start small. I probably do it the opposite way of how I did. I went on stages first, and then I got in front of the camera. And back in those days, there wasn't YouTube, or, anyway, so I had no opportunity to make videos anyway. But if I was starting fresh now, I would probably maybe do what you guys are doing, do a podcast first, get used to, interviewing people and speaking, maybe go to Toastmasters, go take, some sort of speaker training. But I'd also say, I don't know if I should say this, I kind of did, when I went to the TED Talk, like I said, it fell in my lap, and they asked me if I would do it. I said, sure, no problem. 18 minutes. I can speak for 18 minutes. I usually speak for 4 days. That's easy. And then the next day I got an email saying, well, here's the timeline, Mike. By this day, this is due. And by this day, this is due. And I go, what? So anyway, they wanted me to send transcripts of what I'm going to say word for word, and then do revisions. And then anyway, to make a long story short, that's not how I normally speak. I just show up and I speak from the heart. And a lot of times I think it's almost like channeled through me. I don't even know what I said after half the time. So for me to go memorize it, that's like totally against everything that I do, because it's definitely not go with the flow. And so I remember I sent them the first transcript. I actually recorded myself and then had it transcribed, and I sent that to them. They said, "Oh, that's pretty good, but we want you to change this, 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 and this." And I go, "Oh man, how many revisions are we going to do?" Anyway, to make a long story short, I remember I had one of my 3-day online trainings coming up, and I said, "Listen, I can't deal with my TED Talk for the next couple of weeks." So I didn't. And then by the time I was free, they were busy because it was getting pretty close to TED Talk time. So I ended up doing it my way anyway. I ended up speaking just from the heart and doing it my way. And so I don't know if the person who invited me is going to hear this. I'll be in trouble. But anyway, that's the truth of how I did it. So the other thing that I would tell people is do it whatever's comfortable for you. If you need to memorize it, if you need slides, whatever it is for you that is your crutch. If you need a PowerPoint, do that, or at least start with that. And then I remember the first probably 15 or 20 times I spoke. Each time I was nervous, but I was a little bit less nervous. And then it got to a point where I felt pretty comfortable out there. And it's like, instead of, worrying, hey, what do they think about me? Or I hope I don't forget to say this. I just started speaking from the heart and just doing it my way. And I got really comfortable, and I could joke around with the audience. It didn't seem rehearsed. It didn't feel like I could just be me on the stage. And so do whatever it takes to be you, be your authentic self. Don't worry about being perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. And also know that the audience isn't there thinking, I hope you fail. I hope this person sucks. They're all with you. They're all rooting for you, and they want to learn from you. And also remember, whether you're on a stage or whether you're shooting a video, whether you're on a podcast, you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for that person who needs to hear your message that day. Just like that one lady who got my marketing materials that was looking at taking her life. You don't know how you're impacting people. So this isn't for you. So get over yourself and just do it. And remember that you're there to help other people. And that's why you're doing it.
Yeah. So basically, mindset, get that negative no out of your brain and say yes. Secondly, just do it. And know, in Brendon's word, you're going to suck at it at first, and that's okay.
It's going to be clunky.
Yeah. And then basically you're going to build confidence each time you do it to get to the point where you get out there and just become more natural with it.
Yeah,
you can't get worse by practicing.
Yeah, it's like training a muscle.
Yep, training a muscle.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would just say that, I wish I would have gotten over that fear earlier when I was in university, because then maybe that would have served me. And, I could have been earlier speaking on stages than I did. And, but anyway, everything happens in its own time. But I'd say the biggest thing that I would tell myself now, if I have to start over, is that, hey, you're not doing that. This isn't for you. It's that person that needs to hear your message today. And when you do that, then it's not you're letting down. It's the rest of the world that needs to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, I have had sometimes feedback from just some small videos I put on YouTube on regular basis. And someone just saw it and said, "Oh my God, Crystal, thank you so much. This really touched me. It felt like you were talking to me. How did you know about my, issue?" Mm-hmm. And of course, I didn't know. I just talked about what was in my heart and what was relevant at that time. So it's so true that you never know how you will touch or where your message will reach.
We've actually, on at least 2 occasions, I can remember, just doing what we love to do in order to help and serve people, not even thinking about, anything else. I can remember at least on 2 occasions where on that particular day, we made an impact on somebody's life, and it basically saved their lives. So we can certainly relate to that, because we didn't wake up that morning with the intention to share information to keep somebody from committing suicide or whatever the case might be, but because we had changed our mind to do what we love, and even though it may be uncomfortable at sometimes to continue to do it and share it, we did make that difference in somebody's life.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. There's a lot of times where I don't look at, but I think about some of my early videos that I shot that are still on YouTube. And I think, oh man, I got to take those down. But I get emails all the time from people saying, "Oh, I'm so glad that I saw your video today." And it's and then I remind myself, hey, those are not for me. And I never watch my videos, by the way, but those are not for me. That's for somebody else. And so I just leave it up there. So it's going to be there forever. And I feel like I've matured a lot as a speaker over the years and got more comfortable with it, but whatever. The videos I put out there, they're meant to serve other people, and they're doing just that. And but I'm glad I conquered that fear, because it was was crippling. Like I said, I took zero. And the professor even asked, hey, do you want to make up for it? No, I'll just take a zero. Like that's how scared I was. And so, but sometimes I look at, like I said, you get in this flow and you end up kind of on this path where you'd be so foolish not to take that opportunity that you can't say no to it. And so that's what's happened for me. And I know some other people, same thing. They didn't really want to do it. And now they look back and it's like, getting out of your comfort zone is the best thing you'll ever do. That's where all the best stuff happens.
Yeah, I've got one other question that maybe the viewers and listeners might be able to grab some tidbits from. So we talked about, speaking and getting the confidence to do that. And you talked a few minutes ago, it made a huge impact on your growth to delegate or have a team. What would you say to our listeners and viewers that are like, they're so close, they're on that cusp, they just can't quite get over either. And I don't mean personally releasing the responsibility, although that is a challenge I think any of us face, but maybe they can't hire the team that they need to hire because financially maybe they're not quite there yet, but they're riding that line. What would you suggest to help delegate or get a team to get you up over that hill so things start rolling the way that we know that they can?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. The first one is that a lot of people, they say exactly that. It's like, well, I can't afford to hire this person. And then I turn around and I say, listen, you can't afford to not hire that person because you're going to be stuck exactly where you are. You're not going to be able to scale unless you get that, that person. The other thing I would say is, when I started real estate, I get a lot of people come to me and they say, Mike, I'd love to get into real estate investing, but I've got no money. And I say, man, you got no money. You are so lucky. Because when I first started, I was aspiring to get to no money. I was like negative 25,000 in student loan debt. So you're lucky you're starting with zero. But the thing that I would say is that when you don't have a lot of resources, you've got to become resourceful. So for example, when I did one of my, my first flips, I after I'd taken that big loss, I had enough money now to get the property, but it needed some fixing up. And I didn't have the money to pay a contractor to go fix it, nor was I handy, which is actually a blessing in disguise, because otherwise I would have tried to fix my own homes. Don't ever do that. But so, I had to be resourceful. So I basically found a contractor and I forget what the numbers are. I'll just make up a number. But let's say it was $20,000 to fix up that property that I was going to flip. Well, I said, hey, you know what? If you're willing to wait an extra 3 months or 4 months until after I flip this property, instead of $20,000, I'll pay you $25,000. Would you be willing to do that? And he said yes. So now, even though I couldn't afford to hire him and give him his money up front, I made different arrangements. I created different terms with him. So there's people that will take more in the future if there's people that will gladly take more money and wait a little bit longer to make a larger amount. There's also people that if they believe in your cause, like when you see me at Brendon Burchard events, I am not getting paid to be there. I'm there as a volunteer because I love his message. I love his mission. I love the people he attracts. If people say, oh, you've been there for years and years and years, he should be paying you by now. And I go, if he were to pay me, I would leave. I would never show up again, because when I do something, if I'm doing something to volunteer, that's not to increase my bank account. That's to increase my fulfillment account. That makes me happy and fulfilled when I'm volunteering and giving back and doing something with nothing in return. If I were to get paid for it, well, that's like, well, if I'm getting paid this amount to do this, well, then I might as well go, work in my business. Why am I working in his business? So you have to realize that sometimes people do things for different reasons. So if you're doing something, let's say it's heart-centered, you have some sort of mission, other people resonate with what you're doing. There's people out there that they want to latch on to your movement and what you're creating. They want to be a part of that. And they're not looking to make money. That's not their need, is to make the money. Their need is they're looking for something else from that. And so these are things you want to consider. Also, a lot of the most successful people. So I think you guys know, I used to own some other businesses besides real estate. I had a pub and a tomato sauce company, etc. Those were businesses that weren't necessarily my passion, but I had partners who were experts in it. And so I put up the money and they put in the time and they did the work to do that. So there's people that do things for very different reasons. They have very different motivations. It's not always it's not always that, hey, I need the money now. They may want to be a part of something that you want to build. And so I would keep that in mind. I'd also say that, I've had a lot of people, especially once you start to become a little bit successful. I get people every day that say, Mike, I can't afford to be in your coaching program, but what can I do for you? I'm happy to be your boots on the ground in this city. I'll go look for real estate deals. I'll do this, I'll do that. So just realize that not everybody's motivation is, hey, I want to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. So those are some of the things you want to keep in mind. Also, there's people, so I know I was telling you about those businesses that I used to be involved in. I wasn't really looking to get involved in any of those businesses, but I had a reputation for being an investor. So people would put these things on my lap. But these businesses were all failing when I got involved in them. Now, if the owner of that pub had come to me, instead of selling it to me and said, listen, Mike, I'm really struggling, and I know you're pretty good with business. Can I hire you to mentor me on how to get this business successful? I could have helped him get the result that I ended up getting after I bought it from him. So, but if he would have offered to pay me, if he would have said, hey, Mike, I'm willing to pay you X amount of dollars, I probably would have said no, because I wasn't looking for more work. But if he would have said, hey, Mike, why don't we do a joint venture? And if you can turn my business around, then I'll pay you some of the profits. Now I'd be interested. So using that example, if you're looking for a marketer, you say, I can't afford a marketing team. Well, if you found a really good marketer, they probably would rather get paid a percentage of the results they're getting you than to get paid, X amount salary or upfront fee. And so just realize not everybody's looking to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. There's a lot of different ways to get teams. There's other people that might just want to, latch on with what you're doing. There's a million different ways, but you're probably never going to be able to hire a team if you have that mindset that, I can't afford that. And so one of the things I'd recommend is stop doing minimum wage jobs. If you're cleaning your own home, for example, hire somebody to do that. Take that extra time to apply to something that's going to add up and show up bigger in your business. So those are different things you want to consider. And I find so many people, it's all in their minds. Like, I can't afford. Well, what if you gave up that Starbucks every day? What would that add up to? Who could you hire if you gave up some of those, frivolous things for just a little while till you get that person in your business that's going to help you grow? And then when you start to make more money, then go to Starbucks 3 times a day, but get that stuff happening.
Good points.
Yeah. So in all of these years, which is like 30 or more years, I think one of the key elements which really stood out when I was listening many of these podcasts was relationships. I think you have learned quite a bit about humans and people and relationships. What would you say in general, if you even can do something like that? Maybe the 3 tips, how to have good relationships, because I understand in your kind of business, relationships are everything. Without good relationships, you can't be a good real estate investor, right?
Actually, before you answer that question, I want to take it one step further. So there's relationships on a couple different levels here. So not only are you building those relationships that are, the people within your sphere and that close personal relationship, but also the relationships that you're building that are creating that network.
Yeah. Well, to me, that's huge. That's actually one of the biggest components of success in business, whether it be real estate or any other business. It's all about relationships. So if we go back and we talk about my Foreclosure Fixers business, I always went in, and like I said earlier, it's what is the best outcome I can give this other person who's on the other side of the table from me? What's the best outcome I can give them and still create a win for myself? So I don't want to become a martyr. I'm not there to be a charity. I want to help as many people as I can, but I can't sustain my business if I'm giving everything away. I mean, sure, I could pay somebody more than their house is worth, and eventually I'll be bankrupt, and then I'll be the person in need of help. So to me, everything it's about a win-win. 2, it's all about putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And at the end of the day, and this comes down to what you said earlier about karma, when you start to do good things for people, well, they start to talk about it. If you do bad things for people, they also start to talk about it. So whatever you're doing eventually is going to get around. People, you're either going to have a good reputation or you're going to have a bad reputation. And if you're going out of your way to create win-wins for people, make sure that other person is in a much better spot. You give them that soft landing, much better spot than when you found them, much better spot than if the bank foreclosed on them, and you leave them in a better place. And then you don't just abandon them. Then you actually stick with them. Well, guess what? On the way back up, they're going to work with you again because they may have lost their home, but one day they're going to get, human beings are resilient, and we sometimes have to hit rock bottom before we bounce back. But once we do, watch out. And so some of these people on their way back up, they wanted to work with me again because I took good care of them on the way down, and I didn't, I was there for them if they needed it. So to me, it's all about, helping other people, looking at win-wins everywhere you can. And, to me, one of the things that's really important is I like to think I changed my currency. When I was younger, it was all about more money, more money. How do I get more money? How do I fill up my bank account? And I really wasn't focusing that much on my relationships. I was within my business, maybe the people I worked with, I was always taking care of, making sure they were in a good spot. But I really wasn't, I wasn't there for my daughter as much as I could have been. And also for my health, we sometimes try to fill up our bank account so much that we forget about those other things that we need to keep full, like our health and our, relationships, all that stuff. And so over the years, I changed my currency from money to happiness and fulfillment. Those are my two main things. So when I wake up in the morning, I think about, hey, well, what makes me happy? Where would I be happy today? If I wake up somewhere, I'm a really big fan of the sun. I love my vitamin D. And being a Canadian, wintertime does not give me a lot of vitamin D. So, I've been spending most of my winter in Mexico because I know that's where I'm going to be happy. Also, if I'm hanging out with my grandkids, that makes me happy. If I'm volunteering, that makes me happy. And then there's the other thing I like to keep, full, and that's fulfillment. And always, to me, fulfillment comes from helping other people. When I know that I took somebody who and maybe showed them, taught them something about their finances, or if I helped somebody who was really down on their luck, or if I went, I've done a lot of volunteer work in a whole bunch of different capacities. That stuff creates fulfillment for me. And like I said, with that example about Brendon Burchard earlier, if he started to pay me, well, that wouldn't add any fulfillment. Now it's just, I'm getting paid to do a job. It's a transaction. Well, I'd much rather make my money some other way. So now I would stop doing the thing that fulfills me because it's not fulfilling anymore. And so to me, it's really a matter of having that balance in your life. And I'm in no way saying, hey, forget about the money. Just worry about happiness and fulfillment. If you forget about the money, you're going to be in big trouble, which is why I teach, one of the things I teach is passive income. How do you get that money coming in while you're volunteering, while you're hanging out with your family, while you're, working on your health, while you're, doing the things that light you up, like travel, whatever it is for you, you should be doing that, but you can't take your eye off the money. That's got to keep coming in. Don't abandon money, but there's ways to put it on autopilot so it keeps coming in while you're doing the things that you enjoy. And then you can focus on happiness, fulfillment, giving back, the stuff that really matters and makes a difference on this planet. When you're on your deathbed, I guarantee you, it won't really matter how much is in your bank account. It's going to be totally irrelevant. I like to think that we'll be thinking about the differences that we made on this planet while we were here, and the adventures that we had, and other people that we helped make happy. And to me, that's what's really important. And so I have changed a lot over the years, and just kind of evolved and matured. And I think I'm at a much different level of consciousness than I was, when I was younger. But we're all on our journey to get there. I didn't figure it, I didn't just wake up one day. But that's what I've learned over the years. And so, but relationships are really the most important thing. It's how you treat other people, and always, making sure it's a win for them. If every time you do a deal with somebody, it's a win for them and a win for you, you're going to keep doing deals together forever. And that's a much better scenario than I do a deal with somebody, I get a home run, and they're left in a really bad spot, and that's the end of that relationship. So I got my one big paycheck, yay, lucky me. But now that relationship is burnt, and they're never going to refer anybody to me. So it's always, the long term is who knows you, and what do they think of you? Do they think that you're a giving, caring person? Do they think you care about them and that you want to make a difference? Or they think, oh, well, this guy is always riding my coattails. So relationships are very, very important. But the cool thing is, when you have great relationships, your friends and the people that you have a relationship with, they can't wait to introduce you to other people that they've got relationships with, and vice versa. So I love being a connector, and I love being connected to people.
Well, and part of that relationship networking is like the team that you have. I mean, that's a relationship. All the brokers and private money and bankers and everybody else, that's a relationship that's helped create your success, and you've created good relationships with them. And I understand you've even had relationships with people where you get to go to Oscar parties and rub elbows with, other people that have reached a level of success. And those are relationships. Basically, it's a full circle of relationships, not just the personal relationships and that, but you have good relationships with your teams. I know what your teams are willing to do for you out there. That's because you've created a good relationship. You have relationships with investors that are calling you, say, hey, Mike, I got money still, let's go out and spend it somehow. And you're helping them. And they do that because of the relationship you built with them. It's not just a financial transaction to them for them coming back to you. It's because you've created that good relationship with them.
There's two really big things. One of them is trust. If people know you, like you, trust you, and they know that you're looking out for their best interests, then you don't have to go through all the process. People don't have to do their due diligence on you if you have a great track record and they know that you're always going to, if something goes wrong. And if you're in this industry long enough, things are going to go wrong. We're dealing with human beings. So even if you do all the due diligence in the world, things will sometimes go wrong on real estate deals. It's just the nature of the industry, but it's how you deal with it when something goes wrong. How do you fix it? Do you put yourself in the shoes of the person who just had that thing go wrong on their property? And what are you going to do to fix it and make it as right as you possibly can? So there's a trust part. And then there's also, I like to think that having the right culture in your business, meaning that people don't feel like they're just going to do a job. It's not a 9-to-5 job with them. They feel like they're a part of something bigger, and they know that you're going to take care of them. And, my teams, they know how much money I'm, that I make on some deals, et cetera, or not. But they know they're going to get, if we have a really good year, I'm going to take really good care of them. And they're never going to, I don't lay off people. If things get slow, I'll find a way to keep, I'm not going to let people struggle just to cut my payroll. And luckily I didn't have to. And even during COVID times, a lot of people in the real estate industry, it was pretty tough. A lot of people weren't getting rent and they had to lay off, their teams. I didn't lay anybody off. We have, we put better systems in place. So you want to have a culture where people know that you've got their back. And if you do that, they're going to have your back. And a lot of times, I hear people say, oh, well, it's so hard to find good employees and nobody. Well, people don't think about, well, how are you treating them? What are you giving them? Are you just giving if you're just treating it like it's a 9-to-5 and you're paying them X amount of dollars, that job is a commodity to them. And if somebody down the street offers them 25 cents an hour more to do the same job, they're going to leave you. But if they know that you've got their interests in mind, you're going to take care of them, you're going to give them bonuses, you're going to make them feel like they're part of something much bigger than just that job, that makes all the difference in the world. And so I just think it's so important to take care of the other people that make your life possible. And that's another reason why I love volunteering at Brendon Burchard events, for example, is when I go there, I do whatever is necessary. I don't say, well, I'll do this job and this job, but these jobs are way beneath me. I'm too good for that. I don't do that. It's like whatever you need done, we're going to do it. If it's moving chairs, I'm going to do it. If it's customer service, whatever it is that needs to be done, I do it. Now, within my own business, I'm very, very selective as to the things that I do. But when I'm volunteering for somebody else and doing things that I wouldn't do in my own business, it makes me realize how important all those people are in the background. No matter what their job is, whatever it is they're doing in the background, even if it seems relatively minuscule, those little things are what make the big things happen. And so I never forget, what it's like for those people that are doing those tough jobs. And it's always on the front of my mind. And I make sure I take care of everybody within my organization to make sure that they're happy and cared for, and they know that that they're making a difference with the things that they're doing, even if it doesn't seem that significant. When you're looking at the end product and you're looking at what you do, and you feel like, oh, I'm just doing that. I want everybody to feel like they're significant and that everything they do counts.
Absolutely.
So now, so many good tips you have been sharing with us today. But one of the things I think people are still really, really struggling, and I know for sure you touched this in your coaching programs, like a little bit Michael has shared with me as well. But would you be so kind and share with us maybe a couple of tips about, how to communicate, conquer, face fear? Because now we have still people who have lost their jobs or are about to lose their homes or whatever the situation is, or are in like really bad health and like really scared about the pandemic and so on. What are those like really simple tips and tools you would give them, like how to face these difficult times, and especially fear, which can, some people
Paralyzed.
like really, yeah, they're paralyzed. They're like, oh, I can't do anything. And they go into that victim mode, and it's like game over. Like I'm like out, What are your tips?
Yeah, it's very easy to fall into that trap. I know a lot of us do and have fallen into that trap. And so I say, first of all, always be optimistic. And so one of the things that I recommend doing is practicing gratitude every single day. One of the great things that's come from a lot of the volunteering that I've done is, I fixed up homes in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And, you don't even want to know some of the stuff I saw in some of those homes. We fixed them up. We brought a bunch of people back. But there were like dead pets in people's attics and people's wedding dresses, like just, covered in mud, and just people's memories. I've also been to places where we brought, water filters where people didn't have clean drinking water. And when you see stuff like that, and then you come back home, it's very hard to not have gratitude when you turn a tap and magically water comes out. So number one, realize that no matter what you're going through now, there's people on the other side of this planet. Your bad day would be their dream day. They can't even imagine having a day as good as yours. So the fact that you're watching this right now, that you've got, a computer and Wi-Fi, that's unimaginable to some people on this planet. So number one, be grateful for what you do have, even though you might be going through some really tough times right now. The other thing is realize that everything in life is cyclical. When things are really bad, they're going to get better. The world is not going to, we've had other pandemics before. They come, they go, and then life, it's going to be a different normal, but we're going to have some sort of new normal. And like I said earlier, I think some parts of the normal are going to be better than the old normal. I really do. I'd also say, turn off the negativity. Like I stopped watching news many, many, many years ago. I don't watch the news at all. Occasionally I have to go do a little research to see what borders are open, but I'm selective as to what news am I letting into my brain. I'm not sitting there watching all day. And trust me, if you're not watching the news, you're not going to wake up one day and go, why are all these people wearing masks? Your friends are going to tell you what's going on. You're going to get news whether you want it or not. But to sit in front of the TV for hours dwelling on this stuff, that's not going to make things better. That's going to make things worse. And also be really selective who you're hanging out with. If you're hanging out with other people that are negative all day long, they're just going to bring you down even further. The other thing I would say is don't try to control things that are uncontrollable to you. So for example, during the election, I'm glad that's over. I'm glad I'm Canadian. But anyway, during that time, everybody, that's all people are focused on is this election. And I mean, to me, anyway, I'm not going to get political whatsoever. However, I will say that other than your one vote, you don't have any say in the matter. So you could dwell on it. You could let this whole thing overtake you, overwhelm you, take up all your bandwidth, or you could take that time and say, hey, well, listen, I'm going to cast my one vote. I did my thing. Now on to other things I can control in my life. And one of the things you can control right now, instead of watching the news, you could take time. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because you're watching this right now, which is awesome. But take this time to educate yourself on it. It doesn't have to be real estate, whatever it is for you that is exciting to you. Maybe you lost your job and you don't know what you want to do next. Maybe you had a hobby that you never had enough time to maybe you like playing guitar like I do, and you never had enough time to play that guitar before because you're always working. Maybe you pick that up and use that to relax yourself, and then start thinking of things that you can do going forward to reinvent yourself. What does a new you look like? What a year from now, assuming this pandemic's gone, you can do whatever you want. What are you doing? Where are you working? Are you still working at that place that you always complained about, and now all of a sudden now it's closed, you miss it? What does life look like in the future for you? So use this time really wisely. COVID created a whole bunch more bandwidth for a lot of people. You're probably not going to movies like you used to. You're probably not spending as much time doing a lot of the things that that you used to do. And now you've got this extra time that you can use to go and read more and take more courses and reinvent yourself as whatever it is that you want the rest of your life to look like. And whatever you're doing before, you could do so. You could be doing something that you like 100 times more. You just don't know it because you haven't got started yet, or you don't see yourself doing it because you haven't taken the first step to learning it. Just like me with public speaking, had I not been more or less forced to go on a stage, I would have never pursued that. And so many great things have happened as a result of it, including me being on this podcast. There's no way that I would have done a podcast if it existed in my university days. I would have said, no, thanks. That's just not me. So go and reinvent yourself, figure out what that looks like, and get your just create a better version of you for 2021 and 2022.
You know what? I think we're just going to quit trying to sell our own reinvent program and just have you sell it for us.
I can do that for you. There we go. And I think that's really important work that you guys are doing, by the way. I think that's really important because there's so many people in a flux right now, and it's a time of transition for so many people. And it's like extremely timely, and people really need that right now because it's very easy to try to cling on to the past. And sometimes these things happen and they force you they make it impossible to hang on to the past because that is gone. Whatever you did before may not even exist in the future. And I'm just looking at all these big companies that are, shutting down. But what happens, that money doesn't disappear. There's a transfer of wealth happening, and that money is floating to somewhere. And if you take the time to learn how to do it, you could be on the receiving end of this. Whenever, the Great Depression was the biggest transfer of wealth in history until the Great Recession of 2007, 2008, 2009, then that became the biggest transfer of wealth in history. And now COVID, this is going to be the biggest transfer of wealth in history. And for people to take the time to figure out how to participate in that, you have a lot to be optimistic about. So don't be buried with your head in the sand. Instead of waiting for life to happen to you, now's the time to take life by the horns and just go create something awesome.
Yeah, so when the problem knocks on your door, you open the door and welcome it in as an opportunity.
Yeah. Big time. So easy to try to hold on to the past. And, that's the easy way. It's definitely the way that our comfort zone likes it. But I just, for a lot of people, what existed in 2019 is gone and not coming back. So now's the time to figure out what does the future hold for you, and how do you make the future way better than what you had even before?
Yeah. So one question we always try to ask our guests here on the podcast is, imagine one day when your beautiful golden days as a human on this planet are done, and people will look you up okay, who was Mike Wolf? And maybe they even find this podcast, who knows, and then, they figure out wow, Mike's legacy was this or that. What do you think? What's your, I don't know if you have consciously thought about it, but what would you like your legacy to be? Once you are gone, what would you like to leave behind, and what would you like people would take from your gifts and knowledge, what you are sharing?
Yeah, well, I think one, that's a tough question because I think I've got at least another 100 to 200 years. But yeah, really for me, it's all about making a difference. And just, I was the underdog, so I love the underdog. So I just want to help as many people as possible who don't really, exactly what you said, they don't really see the future for themselves. Right now they're just in this holding pattern. They're overwhelmed, and there's all this negativity and fear and doubt going through their mind. I just want to show them that I'm this shy Canadian kid who, I really sometimes have to pinch myself and say, how did I get here? How did I go from that to this? And so one, have faith that, the things that are happening to you are happening for you. And sometimes they're uncomfortable and they force you to have to make changes that you wouldn't do otherwise. But a lot of these things, you're going to go back down the road and think it was the best thing that ever happened to you, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. So I love to work with the underdog. I love to think that I can inspire some people who don't feel that inspired for themselves just yet, and help move them into action. And so I just really want to make a difference. That to me is the most important thing. I want to make a difference. I want to, to me, it's just little things too. I can't wait till borders reopen, and I want to fill my grandkids. I have 2 grandsons. I want to fill their passports up and show them the planet and show them what a beautiful planet we live on. And that, we're filled, unlike what you're going to see on the news, this planet's filled with amazing, beautiful people, not, all this stuff that all this negativity that is being fed to us. I don't believe that exists. Well, I believe it exists to a very small extent, but I believe there's a lot more good than bad, but the media can't monetize good as well as they can bad. So they're never going to do that. They're never going to portray that. And so I just want to show people, especially my grandkids, but I want to inspire everybody to get out there and live the best life and make a difference for other people. We can all pull each other up instead of bring each other down.
Yeah. Such a beautiful message.
Very powerful.
Yeah. We are so grateful that you took the time to share your amazing gifts and treasures, and your many examples which you shared today is a really amazing example how you put your gifts into action, and how that creates abundance in action in your life, and how everyone else can do it as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's been such a pleasure to be here. And thanks for helping spread the word and helping people in these really, glad that you're helping people in these really tough transitionary times, and it's so necessary. So I appreciate what you're doing too.
Yeah, well, we're just beginning.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best to Mike and his projects, and to all of our listeners and viewers, thank you for spending time with us. And as always, please like, share. Also, if you have a little extra moment, please also write a review. And you can find our podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, and also the videos go up to YouTube. So if you just put in Abundance in Action, there it is. So thank you and all the best, and lots of aloha till next time. Mahalo.
Mahalo.